You already know what it feels like to check something that can't actually see you. A photo you keep reopening, a message you reread 3 times before sending. A number that goes up and for 1 second feels like being known. It isn't being known, it's being reflected. There's an old difference between those two things, and the Greeks built an entire myth just to warn you about it. Narcissus wasn't destroyed by loving himself too much. He was destroyed the one time in his life someone actually asked him to know himself, and all he had ever owned was a reflection. By the end of this, it's worth asking what you've been checking instead. Narcissus was born to a river god and a nymph, and before he could even talk, his parents did what every worried parent in Greek myth does: they asked a seer what was coming. Tiresias, the blind prophet who told half of Greek mythology the truth nobody wanted to hear, gave them one sentence. The boy would live to old age on exactly one condition: that he never know himself. Nobody understood the warning because it made no sense yet. Narcissus grew up beautiful enough that the countryside itself seemed to fall for him: nymphs, admirers, strangers he never looked at twice. One of them was Echo, a nymph already cursed by Hera to never speak first, only ever repeat the last words said to her. She loved him completely and could only answer him back in his own voice. He rejected her the way he rejected everyone. She wasted away until nothing was left of her but a voice that still answers when you call into an empty room. One of the people Narcissus spurned prayed to Nemesis, the goddess whose entire job was making sure arrogance got exactly what it deserved. Let him love, the prayer went, and let him never have what he loves. Nemesis led him to a still forest pool, undisturbed by animals or wind, water so clear it held a perfect reflection. He bent down to drink, and for the first time in his life looked directly at something that looked back exactly as hard as he did. He fell in love instantly, not with a person, with an image. He reached into the water to hold it, and it broke apart into ripples every single time. He stopped eating, stopped sleeping, stayed at the edge of that pool, speaking to a face that moved exactly when he moved and never once answered back. In most versions of the story, he dies right there, still staring. Ovid even has him crossing into the underworld and finding a new pool in the river Styx, leaning over that one too. Where his body had been, a flower grew instead. We still call it by his name. Here's what almost nobody mentions about this myth, and it's the actual key to it. Know thyself, not thy suiton wasn't just good advice in ancient Greece. It was carved into stone at the entrance of the oracle at Delphi, the single most sacred instruction in the entire Greek world. Socrates spent his whole life treating it as the beginning of wisdom. Tiresias's prophecy takes that exact command and reverses it. Narcissus will be fine, the prophet says, as long as he never knows himself. The most famous philosophical instruction in Western history, and this myth exists specifically to warn you what happens the one time it finally arrives. And when the moment came, it didn't look like wisdom, it looked like a mirror. A reflection can be perfectly accurate and still not be self-knowledge, and the reason is almost mechanical. Self-knowledge requires something that can disagree with you, a person who reacts, misunderstands, pushes back, sees an angle you don't. A reflection does none of that, it only ever agrees. Psychologists have a real, well-tested idea for part of what happened to Narcissus. Social comparison theory, first studied by Leon Festinger in the 1950s, found that people constantly measure themselves against whatever's directly in front of them and mistake the measuring for understanding. The psychoanalyst Jacques Lacan went further and named this exact moment an infant first recognizing itself in a mirror, the foundation the entire adult self gets built on, built from an image before it's ever built from anything real. Narcissus spent his entire death measuring himself against an image that could only ever agree with him. That's not self-love. That's the closest thing to starvation a person can experience while staring directly at a full meal. What's the reflection you keep checking instead of asking someone who actually knows you? Tell me below. The fix isn't look at yourself less. It's noticing which mirrors in your life can actually talk back. A follower count can't disagree with you. A metric can't tell you when you're wrong. Neither can a version of yourself you've spent years curating to be agreeable. Find the people who see you clearly enough to occasionally get it wrong, argue with you, tell you something you didn't ask to hear. That friction is the only thing standing between a reflection and actually being known. Narcissus never got to find out who he was, he only ever found out what he looked like. If you like stories that become uncomfortable once you realize they're about you, subscribe. That's what we do here. Narcissus couldn't stop looking at something that gave him back exactly what he wanted forever. The next myth is about a man who got exactly what he wished for, and it never once stopped being exactly what he wished for. His name was Midas.